My name is Roseanne Ludiger, and I'm with Heart of Wisconsin. I'd like to thank you all for coming today to our seminar. We advertised it as Please God, Let Me Get Back to the Truck, but in the catalog we have it listed as Reading Between the Lines. Dr. Randall Lockwood's portion is Bite Prevention for Law Enforcement Officers and First Responders. Alta Tauser will be videotaping today. You don't need to worry, you will not appear on the video unless you actually come to the front of the room. So you law enforcement officers are going deep cover, don't have to worry about being identified later. Without further ado, I'm going to introduce Dr. Patricia McConnell. She will be doing the seminar from 8:30 to 12. Those of you who have listened to Wisconsin Public Radio Calling All Pets probably already know Patricia. She's been giving seminars on dog behavior for a number of years. She also runs a business called Dog's Best Friend, where she does counseling on all dog behaviors, but kind of specializing on dog aggression. We're very, very lucky to have her and also Dr. Randall Lockwood today. So I would like you to all welcome Dr. Patricia McConnell.
Thank you. I think here you can just give that right back to Alta. This is Lassie. This is the dog you want to meet in the yard when you have to run in. So you have no concerns about her. She's a 10-year-old border collie. Hi, sweetie. I tend to bring her to seminars and just let her schmooze. If anybody here is allergic to dogs, you're in the wrong field. No. Wrong seminar. But if there's some reason somebody was just bitten last week by sort of a black and white, white-faced border collie, tell me. What I might do is alternate between letting her hang out here and my dear friend Beth will be the Lassie handler. If I do ask a favor, if somebody sees my little dog walking out the door, please stop her. So she's here. We're actually going to have you work with her some later. What I'm going to do this morning is I'm going to use a combination of talking, of slides, of videos, and actual work on stage with dogs to accomplish two things. My job this morning is to increase your ability to read a dog and to increase your ability to influence that dog's behavior. Because everybody here, as far as I'm concerned, I define you as the people on the front lines. You're the people who are on the front lines, who are stuck between the teeth and the truck and need to know what to do about it because you don't have a choice. And that's one of the ways we differ. In some ways, what I do and what most of you do is very, very different. I only see people who want to see me. I see dog owners who call my office and say, my dog bit one of you. I see the responsible people. I see the people that that you want to be all out there, who call and say, my dog is barking at the UPS man, or my dog growled at the meter reader. And so I only see people who want to see me. And that's very different than what you do. Most of you, and I'm generalizing here, but I think most of you, being on the front lines, are going onto a dog's territory, not necessarily invited, and not necessarily even welcome, right, by the owners. There's one thing that we share, however, in spite of the motivation of the owners of the dogs that we all deal with, and that is, as it turns out, I have learned after 15 years, it doesn't really matter that much what the motivation of the owner is. Because when it gets down to it, it's between you and the dog. It's always between you and the dog. If I had, I don't know, $10 for every time somebody has said, oh, I thought he would have bitten you by now. People will call office and say, we have a dog who's out of control barking. We got a barking complaint. We've got a citation. Our dog barks out of control. So we make an appointment for a house call. And I go and I do a house call. It's a barking problem, right? They meet me at the door. The dog is loose. He's barking. He's at the door. Dog is loose. I deal with it. I sit down and they say, oh, I'm just amazed he hasn't bitten you by now. Usually he bites in that circumstance. And I think, do I have like an aura around me? Like they think I'm not biteable? And what I've learned, I don't want to demean people because they're my second favorite species. Dogs are my favorite. But I'm very fond of people. I really, really am. And I don't want to just sort of trash talk owners. And it's just true that people do not get, and this is really important, people do not get the distinction between the way their dog behaves to them and the way their dog behaves to people outside of the family. I cannot tell you. As Roseanne mentioned, I specialize in aggression. Been doing it for 15 years. When I was seeing a full caseload, so for probably 13 years, I've seen 10 to 15 cases a week, and 80% of those were aggression cases. And I cannot tell you how many times people said, I don't understand it. He's so sweet. He's so nice. He's the sweetest dog in the world. Look at him. He's so sweet. And the dog is lying at their feet, looking at them lovingly. And I get up and walk toward, you know. He's the nicest. He's not mean. He wouldn't have caused injury if the person hadn't pulled their arm back. That's my favorite. If you hadn't pulled your arm back, there'd have been no wound. You know, he got his teeth caught. That's my. I swear I've heard that a lot. He got his teeth caught. You know, and if the person hadn't pulled his arm back, then he wouldn't have been hurt. It's all your fault. You know, but it's not because people are idiots. It's because usually it's because the distinction, but because what they see is a dog who's sweet and dear and nice to them all day long, and they do not instinctually get the distinction between how a dog behaves to them and how a dog behaves to visitors, to unfamiliar people. Dogs sort the world into familiar and unfamiliar. They are black and white to dogs, and if you think about it, so do we. What would you do if you woke up in the middle of the night and went out and there was somebody you'd never met before in your living room? You would act differently than if you walked out, you know, and it was your mother or your daughter, you know, or your best friend, right? We do too, but we don't inherently, intuitively understand that dogs make the same distinctions. And so the reason I'm mentioning this is because what it gets down to is it's not about the owner. It's about us and the dog. Now, I'm not saying that in many circumstances the best thing you can do is, if you're in a circumstance where you're unsure, is to say, ma'am, put your dog away. You know, I love dogs, but just right now, I need you to put your dog in the back room. Don't ever hesitate to do that. But as we all know, a lot of times it's too late. The dog has already been out when you got out of the truck. 2, there's going to be half the owners are going to say, no, he's fine. He's fine. He's never bitten anybody. It's like the red flag, right? Oh, he won't bite you. Whenever I've heard, he won't bite you, it's like somebody saying, oh, you can't miss it when you're driving. You know, it's like the words of doom. You know, you're never going to find it. When they say, oh, you can't miss it, it's like, oh, yes, I can. So without question, and I think Randy is going to talk more about this afternoon, about the importance of dealing with the owner and saying, I need you to put your dog away. But there are lots of times when it's just between us and the dog. There's just no way around it. It's just between us and the dog. So what I want to do this morning is refine your skills. Probably, obviously, I don't know each and every one of you, and I don't know what your background is, but my guess is that an awful lot of you, if not almost all of you, you already know dogs really well. You know, this is not like the intro dog seminar here. Most of you know dogs pretty darn well. What I want to do this morning is I want to refine your ability to do 2 things. To read dogs so that you can predict their future behavior and you can act in a way to influence it, because that's what it's all about. They do one thing, you do something else. They react to that, you react to that. So we're going to concentrate this morning. I'm going to show you some slides first of all, then I'm going to show you some videos. I'm going to put you to work. You're going to have to turn into Jane Goodall and write down what you see to practice focusing your attention. And then we're going to work some dogs. Sound good? Okay, is everybody all right? Can everybody hear? Everybody's okay, everybody can see, everybody can hear, nobody's too hot, nobody's too cold. Everybody's mother loves them. No, I can't fix that. Okay. All right, let's start by focusing on reading the dog. And as I mentioned before, I think a lot of you are really good at knowing sort of general signals from dogs. What I want to do is boost that up. I want to refine that. This is doggy graduate school here. So a good way to do that, ethologists, Dr. Lockwood and I are both trained ethologists. And all that means is those are scientists, ethologists are scientists who've been trained to study animal behavior. And the first thing they teach you when you're a little neophyte, budding ethologist, is to be an accurate and objective observer. And that sounds simple. You can all watch stuff happen, right? But it's actually doing it really well is a skill that you have to practice. And so what I want to do is focus our attention on some particular parts of a dog's body, some particular visual signals that they give that are really, really important. And I want you to have them so overlearned. You need to overlearn them. You need to see them over and over and over and over again. And we're going to start with them just as a static still, which you never actually see in life, right? Dogs don't freeze, although actually they do. We'll talk about that. That's a problem. But things happen in real time. But the way you train your brain is to learn to look for search images of particular visual signals from dogs. And then when you get those burned into your brain, then your brain can take in the whole gestalt in real time and react to it. And you have about, in a lot of cases, how long do you have? You have about 1/10 of a second, maybe 1/2 of a second. 1/2 a second is a really, really long time. In behavior, a second, people say, oh, it just happened I know you have to be really quick. I know you just have a couple of seconds. A couple of seconds is endless in behavior. Endless. Let me actually just illustrate. I'm going to ask you all as a group, when I say 3, I'm going to count to 3. When I say 3, I want you out loud to count out 1/1000ths. So you're just going to mark a second for me. In that period of time, I'm going to do stuff. And I want you to tell me accurately exactly what I did. And it's just a second. It's just 1 second, right? How much can I do? Okay? So you ready? Everybody ready? All right. 1, 2, 3. So besides making a complete fool of myself, what did I do?
You get a reaction from your dog.
I got a reaction. Hi, sweetie. Hi, darling. How many things did I do? I have no idea. I mean, we'd have to play it back and analyze it frame by frame by frame. But can we agree I did, besides putting my back out, can we agree I did a lot of things? Probably, I don't know, 6 or 8, right? Maybe 20. So let me start by focusing your attention on a couple of the key features that I think are the first ones that I have learned to focus on to keep myself out of trouble, because I am all about not getting hurt. I work in a very high-risk job, obviously. I was talking to my insurance agent yesterday, and he was like, oh. I sent all these potential insurance companies to your website. It's like, oh. I am insured, but obviously I'm in a very high-risk occupation. I deal with dogs who hurt people. That's what I do. So my job is to not get hurt. And don't, by the way, I have twice been bitten in 15 years. I would never brag about that. Don't ever, this is my belief. This is not a scientific statement. This is a belief. I never trust anybody who brags about how often they've been bitten as an example of how great they are with dogs. Your job as a professional dog trainer and behaviorist is to not get bitten. And if you get bitten, then you blew it. So the 2 times I was bitten, once was by a wolf-dog hybrid, and it was the nastiest bite, not in terms of injury, but in terms of just pure evil. I don't think it was about a wolf. It was about this particular individual animal. And another was from, I don't know, a sort of pity labby crossy thing. But both of them, as far as I'm concerned, were my mistake. So my job is to not get bitten. One, for the owner's sake. It's horrible for owners if their dog bites somebody. Horrible. And I hate it, personally. I just hate teeth in my body. Don't like it at all. Okay, so let's look at some signals that can help you read dogs and avoid that happening. And I'm going to show you slides that go over posture, eye shape, eye contact, mouth position, and I'll go over all these in detail, so don't worry about writing them down now. Ear position and movement, tail position and movement, vocalizations. And I'm going to skip, as I mentioned, this is the advanced seminar, I'm going to skip the, well, if you can see his teeth, you know, I'm going to skip that. And this is probably a very eclectic group, so some of you are going to know some of these, but some people won't. Let's talk about body posture first, because if there's one thing that is the most important key to me when I'm meeting a dog who walks into my office or I walk into the lobby to meet the dog, is that sort of gestalt of the dog's posture. Most importantly is that dog's body stiff or is that dog's body fluid? Remember when I mentioned that usually you don't see dogs are moving, you know, so you don't see them in little slides. But I mentioned that every once in a while you do. That's a problem. When dogs are on alert and possibly on offense, they go stiff. When dogs are relaxed, their bodies are fluid and moving. Let me show you a couple of examples. Look at that wolf play. You know, that's a play bow from a wolf. And look at the fluidity of that. And so one of the first things you want to look at, and the stiffness, by the way, can last a tenth of a second. First thing you want to look at is the dog's body stiff or is the dog's body fluid? We're going to watch some videos and you'll see dogs sort of switch from one to another. This is a potential dog fight as far as I'm concerned, because even though this is a static slide, I would bet some big money that if you watched that real time, they wouldn't be moving. When you see two dogs who are greeting each other and their bodies start to stiffen and less movement happens, less and less fluidity, that's the time to call a dog away. That's the time something's about to happen. And by the way, this is equally relevant to you. Can you guys see me okay here? Am I right? This is equally relevant to you. You're working when I greet a dog in the lobby, or when I'm working aggressive dogs on a stage, I've trained myself to keep my body loose and fluid. And I will consciously, if I see a dog, and it's not that I'm never afraid of dogs, I'm often afraid of dogs. I actually called an animal behaviorist once when I first started doing this, and I saw a dog who really scared me, and I called him up and I said, "Oh, I'm a failure. I'm an applied, behaviorist, and I'm seeing this case, and I'm helping somebody, and I was so scared. And I shouldn't be scared." And he said, "Yes, you should have." He said, "Don't be an idiot. Of course you should have been scared. You were about to get hurt, Nothing wrong with being scared. The question is, what are you conveying? And if you stiffen, and I've had to talk to audiences about this. I've been working a human aggressive dog up on a stage, and what happens is as I get closer and closer, what happens is everybody in the audience holds their breath. That's right. She did it. She held her breath, and she went. And when you look out, and you can feel it, you can feel the energy. All of a sudden, entire room of people, they're not breathing, their mouths are shut, their eyes go wide. We'll talk about that in a minute. And I had to turn to the audience and say, "You better breathe," because I'm going to get bitten up here, So I consciously, when I'm meeting a dog who I think might be a problem, of course, given what I do with like all dogs now, I stay just real loosey-goosey. I just stay real loose, unless the dog's threatening me in a way that I need to take over, and then I'll switch instantly. We'll talk about that in a minute. So be aware that the stiffness is a signal from the dog, and it's a signal from you to your dog. I think one of the most common causes of dog fights in neighborhoods, two people walking a dog on leashes, the dogs greeting each other, they're holding the leashes back. We're going to keep some control, right? All that's doing is adding tension, but the people feel like, if I pull back, I'll have a little more control. So there's a lot of tension. But worse, both owners are standing around the dogs, stiffened, saying something like, "I think it'll be all right." You know, in the last fight, he didn't really hurt anybody too badly. You know? So breathe, move, okay? Unless, again, I'll talk about this later, there's an exception. You're being threatened, you're about to get hurt. Stop being loosey-goosey, and you're going to need to sort of take over. We'll talk about that. Here's another situation. This is a slide of two dogs playing at a dog park. These dogs, this could be fine. This completely depends on what happens the next frame. This could be absolutely fine, and this could be a fight about to happen. It completely depends on whether there's movement or they're still. Back to this little puppy. This is a little 4.5-month-old puppy, Bess. She's actually one of my PhD research border collies. Fell in love with her, brought her home. She was not a fighter. She was not aggressive to people, but she was a very high status-seeking dog. She was always sort of looking for a way up. She was very full of herself. And she would get that, see how everything's forward? We'll talk about that in a minute. She would get that sort of everything forward, everything still when another dog came into the property. And basically, she literally never got in a fight in her life, but nobody ever challenged her. Every dog, and I have lots of dogs come to my farm, every dog that came to the farm went, okay, you're queen, that's fine. I don't care. No problem. This is Crystal, this little white standard poodle puppy. This is a puppy, and look at this dog's posture. So this dog is not still. If you saw a video of this dog would not be still. This is a different aspect of posture that I want to talk about. There are two. One is fluidity versus stiffness, and the other is forward versus back. Look at how that little puppy has everything moving forward. It's a little puppy, the little baby puppy, confronting an adult, large elder. And everything on that puppy is forward. The head is forward, the tail is forward, the body is forward, and this forward-backward continuum is probably one of the most important visual signals that you can read and that dogs read from you. This is always goes both ways. One of the cool things about dogs is they seem to read our behavior as if they're translating it into dog behavior. And that's handy sometimes. Sometimes, as I talk about in the book, the other end of the leash, sometimes that's a problem because we're talking primate and they're talking dog. But it helps us to know what we can do around a dog. And so dogs, I have learned, and it was actually working border collies that taught me this. If there's time, I'll show you a video of dogs working cattle that shows you the importance of whether a body is going slightly forward, square over your legs, or slightly backwards. And the differences that I just did, forward, square, back. How much did I move? An inch, 2, forward, square, back. That is enough to get you bitten or not. These signals are ethologically relevant. Dogs pay attention to particularly your torso, and it's your torso that makes the biggest difference. That's a hypothesis, by the way. I don't know that as a scientist. That's what seems to be true. If you watch dogs, they're watching. They stand on their paws. They're watching each other's shoulder girdle and hip girdle. So when a dog shifts their shoulders forward, another dog reads it and sees it instantly. And what it's read as, and there is good science on this, it's read as an intention movement. And all that means, that's just an ethological term, simple one, intention movement. It just means I'm giving you this little action means I'm about to do something else. The classic intention movement is a bird who's about to fly off of a limb. So there's a bird sitting on a limb, and he's about to fly off. Well, you can't just sort of like instantly go from sitting on the limb to flying, right? So in order to actually fly, there's a whole series of behaviors that happens in between. Bird leans forward, bird spreads wings. So every time you're going to fly, if you're a bird, you lean forward, you spread your wings. And it turns out that because that's so predictable, that if a bird leans forward and spreads its wings and does nothing else, the birds around it know, oh, he's going to fly. And it actually becomes a communicative signal. Intention movements, something that predicts something in the future, becomes a form of communication, and animals can use it as a display. And dogs use this as a communication, meaning I've just taken a little bit of space on my way to take a lot more, on my way to come right at you. So you can read this in dogs. When you see the dog comes up to you, watch really carefully. Is that dog forward, leaning forward, taking space ahead of him or her? Is that dog square over paws? Is that dogs can move forward and still keep their weight backwards? We've all seen that dog. And what you probably see a lot of, what I see a lot of, are ambivalent dogs. Dogs who are conflicted inside. Back, 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 back. Back, 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 back. Right? That's that ambivalent, sort of dog in a conflict. I'm scared. I'm going to get you. I'm scared. That tells you a lot about that dog. That usually is not a dog who wants to hurt you. That's a dog who just wants out of this situation. That's a dog where you need to just defuse the problem. If you do the wrong thing, you can escalate it and give the dog no choice. So one of the things that we're going to work on later this morning is some of you practicing going forward and back. Because you need to get it so you don't even think about it. When I see a dog now, all I do, and don't exaggerate it. I have people who've come to my seminars and they walk like runway models, And every once in a while I see that and I go like, oh, what have I done? Oh, that's horrible. But all you need to do, if it's ethologically relevant, you don't need a lot of it. All you need to do is put your weight on your back foot. That's all you need to do. Standing square, back up half a step, put your weight on your back foot. That's all you need to do. It's really a big deal to a dog. Okay, let's look at some more. Here's a dog who has his weight square over his paws. This is a dog who's working sheep who'd never been worked before. This is Jack Knox's Craig. The sheep had never seen a dog. They had not read the books. They literally ran up to him and went like, sniff, sniff, who are you? We're sheep. Are you like a little one? What are you? They had absolutely no fear of him. He actually, I wish I had this on video, this is a million years ago, he actually rocked back but kept his paws where they were and then rocked back forward to sort of hold his place and then had no choice but to see his lovely little tooth display. It's very appropriate. It's a very lovely little, I'm telling you I'm going to bite you next. That's an intention movement. That's a warning signal. Do you see the dog, however, on your right? You see the little black dog? That little dog is way forward. Way forward. And she never lost that posture. This ended, by the way, in him nipping the sheep's nose and the sheep being like, oh, their teeth, oh, girls. Here's two little border collie puppies playing. And here's a lovely example of how little an animal has to move forward or backward to get an instant sense of who's in control. An instant sense. How different is the puppy who's dropped his shoulder with the one who's a little forward? Again, it's only a matter of an inch. But it only has to be a quarter of an inch for a dog to read it. So keep in mind that if you need to take charge of a situation, you need to rock forward. If you need to diffuse a situation, which is going to be most of the time, you need to rock back. Okay? And we'll talk later about straight on versus a little sideways and eye contact, because those are all really important too. Speaking of eye contact, another really important thing to look at. So the first scan I do is sort of this overall body posture, gestalt. Is the dog fluid and moving? Is the dog forward or backwards? Now you can have a dog who's super, super friendly and is all forward. That's fine. But if a dog is bark snarling at you and is forward, it means something different than if he's bark snarling at you and going backwards. So you probably all know, I think everybody here knows that eye contact is also really, really important. And we're so, as a species, this is easy for us because as a species, eye contact is really important to us. Nobody has to teach us that. We don't have to learn it. You instinctually look at people's faces and look at their eyes. And you make a lot of decisions based on their eyes, right? One thing that's very different between us and dogs, however, is that when greeting unfamiliar people, it is polite and appropriate to make eye contact. If I wanted to say hello to you, I would look right at your face, I would lean forward, extend my forepaw, and I would say, hi, how are you? And I'm looking right at her eyes, because that's friendly. Have you ever met somebody who would not look at you in the eye? It's creepy. That's a scientific term, right? It's creepy. It makes you nervous. That is exactly how polite dogs greet each other, by avoiding eye contact. And that's that is a very important evaluative tool that you have when you're greeting an unfamiliar dog. Are they looking you straight in the eye or not? Dogs who do direct stares, if they're coming straight at you and they're looking at you straight in the eye, the instant a dog tries to make sort of continual eye contact with me, I absolutely break it off. I cannot tell you how many clients I have who are in Dog's Best Friend training classes. And in every 10th class, there's a dog who comes to class and sits there and does a scan. Can I get something started with you? Nope. Can I get something started with you? Nope. Ooh, look what I got over here. You know, and they're agitators. And what they're doing is, I don't know why they're doing it, but functionally what they're doing is they're looking to see if they can get into what I euphemistically just call a stare fight. Direct eye contact is a challenge, and whatever the dog's motivation, it's a road to trouble. It's a big road to trouble. So if a dog, I don't ever do this like I'm going to stare you down kind of thing. I don't do that. With unfamiliar dog, client dogs, I never, as a matter of fact, there's a case that came up not too long ago of someone who was going to pet a dog in a crate in a family home, and the dog growled at him, and he stated after the bite that he had been told that what you should do when a dog growls at you is to get right in his face and stare him down. And that worked real well for him. Regrettably not. The dog tries to start a stare fight with me, I am instantly over here. I'm like defusing. How many of you are law enforcement? So you know a lot about diffusing arousal, right? A lot of the aggression, a lot of the injury that I see is related to arousal. It's really important to defuse. Randy's going to talk, I think, a lot about that, and he's got some great stuff about how to avoid that in the specific situation. Dr. Lockwood is going to talk this afternoon a lot about the specific situation. I'm the generalist, he's a specialist. So he's going to talk a lot about diffusing, but we can't say it enough because it's really important, and one of the ways to defuse situations is, first of all, be able to read what the dog is saying with their eyes. Are they doing direct stares? Are their eyes really round? Real round eyes are a potential threat or high arousal. They're trouble. There are a number of reasons why dogs can show you extra round eyes. And this is another species problem, because when we want to communicate with a little baby, for example, we'll raise our eyebrows and go, oh, aren't you sweet? Oh, you know what this is in dog language? Oh, I'm going to kill you. So, for all kinds of reasons, and one is the rounded eyes. Pupil dilation is another important signal. Now, I want to tell you right now, this is not one I count on, because you're not going to be able to, or at least I hope not. I can't see. Could I get a little closer to your dog's face so I can see if his pupils are, sometimes you can see it and sometimes you can't. But when the pupils dilate fast, you're talking about a dog in a very high state of arousal. It's related to a very highly aroused physiological state, and the dog can be extremely fearful. But most importantly, the dog gets into that unpredictable kind of state where, for you law enforcement people, it's like, oh man, these people are emotionally out of control. What I need to do is calm things down right away. The dog's eyes, the pupils go like that, you've got a highly aroused animal that you need to defuse the situation. And there's potential trouble. Now, on this slide here, be aware that there are other reasons why animals' pupils can dilate or constrict. This sled dog, I took this in northern Wisconsin to the sled dog race, this sled dog is looking directly into the sun. And that's why his pupils are so small. You can see how tiny, his eyes are big and round, his pupils are tiny. So I have no idea, based on his eyes, exactly what's really going on with him. However, it's a dog who's looking directly at me, He wasn't, I can tell you, you wouldn't know from the slide, but he wasn't moving very much. There was not a lot of fluidity in his body. And he's on a chain. If in this circumstance, you would pet the dog, you should leave. Please leave the seminar because there's an introductory seminar over there, right? All of you know that this is a potential for trouble. So there are a lot of reasons why animals' pupils can be constricted or dilated, and a lot of reasons why their eyes can be squinty or round. This is a little sight hound with extremely round eyes. Is this dog about to bite somebody? I don't think so. I don't think so. And one of the things I like about this slide is it brings up the very important point that you can't just look at one thing. You have to look at the whole picture. You have to look at mouth and eyes and body and tail. And that's why you need to get so good at these things that you can just see them in a microsecond and you can see 10 of them at once and put them all together and decide what to do in a half a second. So that's why we're going to sort of pound these things over and over and over all day long, because you need to overlearn them so that your brain, because your brain doesn't have time to think, now what did she say? You know, what have I learned? So round eyes can mean a dog is a little big-eyed sight-houndy thing. Every other visual signal of this particular dog is what? Is saying I'm on defense and I'm being affiliative and somewhat fearful, but I'm not on offense. And we'll talk about why, what the signals mean in a minute. The opposite of round eyes are squinted eyes. That's the best, sort of easiest word I can come up with. Just this sort of squinty eye. Look at this wolf. This is from Monty Sloan at Wolf Park. Look at the wolf in the middle, who's submissively licking another wolf on the side, and you see the ears are back in that classic ear back submissive posture. But look at the eye squint. So you can, one, use this to read the dog, but you can also use it yourself. Don't hesitate to increase the amount of lines you have around your eyes as much as absolutely possible. I'm like, you know, the anti-Botox, or maybe I'd be like an ad for Botox or something, you know, because I am always wrinkling my face up as much as I possibly can. I tell people, if you're in dogs, wrinkles are good. We love wrinkles. Wrinkles are really good because when I greet a dog and I'm seeing somebody I'm not sure about, I'm not going to be like, oh, does he bite? That could be a problem. I want to be, again, a little bit back, a little bit sideways, no direct eye contact, and I'm going to get all squinty. Well, hi, sweetie. Oh, you have the prettiest white teeth I've ever seen. I love German Shepherds with big, huge, shiny white teeth. And I mean, I'll literally say that. When dogs are at me, it actually helps me to say, oh, I love your teeth. They're so pretty. I like pretty white teeth. Those are really nice. Hi, sweetie. And she's all squinty. It helps to signal to the dog that you're not about to escalate the offense. Okay, let's do another slide. Just another example of avoiding direct face-to-face contact. This is how a dog wants to have facial contact with you. These pictures, by the way, are from the book from the Cooley Region Humane Society that were kind enough to let me borrow these for the other end of the leash. But isn't this a lovely picture of person and dog getting along really well, avoiding that direct face-to-face contact? This is a dog greeting somebody the way dogs want to. Avoid direct eye contact, and be all squinty-eyed and soft-faced. So you want to be all squinty-eyed and soft-faced too. Another my job is to be squinty-eyed and soft-faced. Another aspect of eyes that's really good to learn about is what Sue Sternberg, who's a brilliant dog handler, calls whale eye. And she just uses that because somebody saw a whale do this. And what it is simply seeing the whites of the dog's eye on one side or the other. And if you look at this dog, it's one of my clients' dogs. If you look at this dog, see all the white you can see on the side of the eye. But this dog is growling at another dog. And what the dog is telling us is, and what dogs who show this, the whites of the eyes on the side are basically saying is I'm trying to turn my head away from this object that I'm concerned about, but I'm so concerned about it, I can't take my eyes off of it. So they'll turn their head away, but then they turn their eyes back to it. And it basically suggests a dog, here's another example, Dogs normally don't show white like that, like we do on the sides of their eyes. So when you see a dog who's greeting you perhaps, who you're working with, and their head is turned away from you, but their eyes are on you, that dog is saying, I want to turn my head away, but I'm too concerned about what is there to take my eyes off of it. And if you think about it, we do the same thing. Not something that you track very much, but you watch people. If they see something that they find really aversive, what they'll do is they'll turn away and then do this. It's really common, and once you start looking for it, you'll see it everywhere, but it's not something you pay attention to. After I did this with dogs, I avoid scary movies a lot, but I was watching some movie that got scarier than I wanted it to be. I'm a complete wuss about scary movies. So I'm watching the screen, and something happened that was just really yucky, some exploding eyeball or something, and so I turned my head away, but I went like, oh my God, I can't not see what's going to happen next, right? And I realized, oh, I'm doing it. We do it too, and so you don't want to do it. You either turn your head away or you keep your head there, because that's a sign to a dog. Nobody reads a dog better than a dog, and they're going to read you like they read dogs. This is just to remind us, again, I was talking about round eye the first time with this slide, and I just wanted to remind us about the direct eye contact versus looking to the side. It's really important. Another aspect of the face, and this is really easy to see, is look for tension around the muscles of the eye. This is often related to dogs who, and I'm not sure about this, I'm speculating, Randy and I should talk about this sometime. I anecdotally tend to relate this to dogs who are concerned, I'll use that word, and who are in some kind of a conflict. This is Luke. This is Cool Hand Luke. This is Lassie's father. Luke adores other dogs. He's 13 years old. He's literally never been in a fight in his life. He works dog-dog aggression cases all the time, and he's terrified of little baby puppies. Just terrified of them. And a lot of male dogs, by the way, are. He's just terrified of them. And he's never hurt a thing in his life. He seems, I'm being very anthropomorphic, but I truly, personally believe that Luke has a personal ethic of not harming things. And so I normally just protect him from the puppies, because he acts like he needs protecting from them. Get them away from me, oh no! I mean, this is a dog who's, got a 300-pound ram off of me, risked his life to do it. He's afraid of nothing except puppies. So I'm letting the puppies get closer and closer and closer, and look at the muscles around his eyes. Here's another one. This is from the Cautious Canine booklet. This is one of our clients' dogs. Look at, it's like they've actually furrowed their brow. And this is really easy to see, although it depends on, a bearded collie is not going to help you out very much here. By the way, I wish, if I was queen, everybody would have a dog with ears, natural, a tail, natural, and a natural coat. because what we've done is made dogs so hard to read, and I do wonder a lot about what that does to dog-dog interactions. This is my first Border Collie, Drift. He is doing an offensive pucker to his son, who's beneath him by the couch. His ears are back, I believe, to me, but look at, if you can see, the muscles around his eyes are real tense. He's like, oh, I'm so conflicted, Alpha, leader bitch is standing there with a camera taping me, but my hateful son is beside me. Okay, let's talk about the mouth a little bit, because this is another area of the dog's body that I am just like a radar looking at. It's without question one of the easiest and most important parts of a dog to look at. And the first thing I want you to focus on is their jaw open or is their jaw shut? And it sounds so simple, but it's huge. Remember I talked about stiffness being important? These things often correlate, because this is what you'll see. I'll sort of illustrate a dog who you might want to think about. Say you're walking into a yard and a dog walks up to you. And you go to reach your hand towards the dog, and this is what happens. Tell me when you're reaching your hand. Right. Now. Closed jaw is a really good sign of a dog at minimum on alert. When dogs go on alert, it doesn't necessarily mean the dog's about to attack something, but it means the dog is on alert. I'm just hanging out. What's that? And if I'm about to pet a dog who does that, my hand's not going anywhere. My hand's coming back. It's an excellent sign that there's something going on that you need to be very, very cautious about. And one of the first things I'll do, or not first thing, one of the things I do when I take notes in my office when people come in with a problem dog, I very often, I'll ask a few things about, how often have they bitten and where do they bite. We all want to know where so we can sort of protect that area. Oh, feet, I actually, when I first started doing this, a friend of mine, I called a friend of mine who'd worked with dogs a lot, and this was like 15 years ago when I first started, and it was my first Malamute case. And the dog had bitten somebody in the belly. And I want to tell you right now, I feel very strongly about belly bites. Very different than, I believe, than bites to the hand, bites to the leg, even bites to the face. I feel very differently about them, and I don't know if it's just my sort of, gut reaction. It just seems so primal. Or if it really means the dog's motivation is different. I really don't know. But this dog had bitten the boyfriend in the belly, and it was a really bad bite. So I was talking to my friend before I went out there, and she said, "Oh, don't go, don't go, don't go." She said, "A friend of mine was working a Malamute, and he bit her left breast off. So I'm go, right? This is what I do for a living, right? And I'm taking notes, and I swear to you, I'm not making this up. I realized halfway through the intake, I was so where they bite you does indeed make a difference. It's true. But back to whether they're going to bite you or not. Closed jaw, open jaw. When a dog goes from ha, 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 to closing their jaw, it means something. And the way I started this little side road was that in my office, I write down when a dog finally opens his jaw, because it's a sign to me the dog finally relaxed. And I can't tell you how many dogs I see in my office. If I, with most dogs, I'll say, I'm just going to ignore your dog, let him go, don't muzzle him, let him off leash, but I'm not going to go mess with him. I'm going to pretend he's not here. I'm going to let him sniff around. I want to see how long it takes him to come up and greet me. So that's usually what I do. There are very rare circumstances where I don't, for obvious reasons. But one of the things I keep in my notes is you'll see these dogs and they don't open their jaw for 45 minutes. And finally I'll go like, oh, look. And it's not because they're hot. I mean, obviously that's one of the reasons why dogs open their jaw. But this closed jaw, tense versus relaxed. The relaxed position of a dog is to have the jaw relatively loose. So jaws are really easy to see and really important to track. Here, this is the face you want to see on a Rottie. This is the face you want. Hello, I'm doing my Labrador impersonation. That's a nice, relaxed face. Told you about Cool Hand Luke and puppies, right? So I set this up on purpose. Poor Lukey. So now the puppies are actually, I'm behind the puppies so you can't really tell distance. They're probably 4 or 5 feet away from him. And look at his jaw. Relaxed, open face. Now his ears are back. They wouldn't normally be back quite like that, all right? So there might be something going on here. He's watching the puppies, but his mouth is open and relaxed. I let the puppies get a little closer, and then I took this frame. Oh, I'm just horrible, miserable. Jaw shut, ears way back. This is a dog in like, oh, please get me out of this. And I had him on a downstay, by the way, because what he would normally do was choose to leave. And of course, the instant I got the picture, I said, okay. And he just got up and left, because that's how he dealt with puppies. It's just, I just stay away from them. But so, open jaw, closed jaw. These were I still have the first 3 dogs. The last dog, Misty, who I called my little demon dog, 4 border collies. Front one is Lassie. She's here, open jaw. Luke, open jaw. Little speckled border collie with the big Labrador head, open jaw. Little tiny fox face Misty, closed jaw. Misty I called her demon dog because she was the dog who was dog aggressive. She taught me tons about treating dog aggression. And she and Lassie always had a little bit of tension. I'm really happy to say it was managed really well. They actually never ever fought. But I worked harder at it than anything I've ever done. And her jaw was shut because we had just called Lassie over to sit right beside her. Basically, Misty and Lassie just ignored, I didn't ignore, but purposefully went out of their way to stay away from each other. But we forced the situation, had Lassie sit right beside Misty. Misty's jaw went shut, and even when Lassie was called around back to the other side, Misty's jaw stayed shut. Tension. It's a sign of tension. Here are those two dogs that we saw before in those stiff postures. Look at their jaws. Which dog are you more worried about? Absolutely, the Dalmatian. The Shepherd's jaw is open. Dalmatian's jaw is shut. I'm far more worried about the Dal right now than I am the Shepherd. Another aspect of the mouth that's really important are the corners of the mouth. It's called the commissure. And this sometimes you can see, and once you learn to look for it, you'd be amazed how fast you can see this and how easily you can see this. Look to see if the corners of the mouth, the commissure, are pulled back, retracted, or whether they're pushed forward. And this is something our species share. Both species, humans and dogs, when you pull the corners of your mouth back, we do it's called in non-human animals, it's called either a submissive grin or a fear grimace. And those things are not the same, but I think they overlap, certainly. The last speculation I heard about the human smile is that it's a derivation of a submissive grin or a fear grimace. And most of us, that makes sense to most of us. Some of you may never have this problem, but some of us who, when you get in situations in which you're sort of overwhelmed and nervous, find yourself with this stupid grin on your face. I think women, frankly, do this more than men. And we start laughing and grinning, and inside you're thinking like, you screaming idiot. Right? It just happens. It's almost involuntary. So the smile has become a kind of intention movement to signal I'm not on offense. And that's the speculation about its derivation. A smile, hi, how are you? Hi, means I am not on offense, I mean you no harm. When a dog pushes the corners of his or her mouth forward, they're on offense. That's where they are. They are on offense. And look at this dog, the one with the whale eye we saw before. The corners of the mouth are pulled back. That dog is on defense. The dog is not on offense. The dog is on defense. The dog coming out from the side, the commissure is more forward. That dog is more, and you can tell also by the forward back, right? Who's on offense, who's on defense? Always be asking yourself, who's on offense, who's on defense? These are from Michael Fox's book, and I love these photos. These are coyote pups playing, and this is just play. But it illustrates, it's a perfect example of how flexible the commissure is. And it's not random that the puppy on the top happens to have an offensive pucker, and the puppy on the bottom has a submissive grin. Those things are correlated, right, with status and offense versus defense. Is another example. And by the way, I have the same, when I do cat ethology talks, I do exact same thing in cats. Same thing. Very common in cats, dogs, and primates. I love this slide. I actually don't know where I got it, so I regret that I can't credit it. I got it 8 million years ago. But I love this slide because this protection dog, I would argue, is really nervous about what is being expected. And the only reason I say that is because of the commissure. Body's forward, ears are forward, but look at that commissure. And it's hard to, its tail's really interesting, isn't it? You mentioned his tail. I wish I could see the next frame, don't you? I mean, what is happening with that tail? I would give anything to know. But the commissure is pulled back. And one of the reasons I believe, and this is really a belief, this is just a belief based on 15 years, I see shepherds who have that mouth a lot. And I think one of the reasons that shepherds are so scary when they're barking at you is that they do have this fear grimace on. And what that means is look at all the teeth you see. Teeth are an ethologically relevant signal to humans. Seeing teeth you don't need to be taught. You see teeth flashing at you and you have an internal reaction. And I think one of the things besides size which is size matters a lot in dogs. I love it when, little tiny Shih Tzus come at me, like, ah, it's like, oh, So what dogs look like and whether you can see their teeth or not is hugely important. I think in this dog, not only do you see a lot of teeth, but you notice how it's black right around the teeth. There's a lot of interesting questions about why animals have black in some places and not others, and one of the things a lot of species do is have fur that marks a particular area to make it more high contrast so it stands out more. Boy, do the teeth stand out there. Rah, 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 rah. But I would argue to you this is a dog who shouldn't be in this job because dogs in this job should be completely confident dogs. They should never be dogs who are fearful. And why did I have that there? Besides the general awe, that's Bo Peep, my first guarding dog, and one of my Border Collie puppies, and I'm sure there was a reason for it, but I don't remember what it is, so we'll just all say awe for a moment, and then we'll move on. Okay, let's talk about tongue flicks. Another really good sign. How many of you know about tongue flicks as a sign of anxiety? Good for you. They're easy to see, and they're really important. A dog who is not licking its lips, I'm going to illustrate for a minute. Okay. I'm making Alta work very, very hard here. A dog who is not, I'm not talking about licking their lips like, ooh, he opened the can of dog food, oh boy, she's having steak. So when the tongue comes out to the side and licks sort of around up the muzzle, that's like, oh boy, I'm starting to salivate now, and I smell food. A tongue flick comes straight forward out of the mouth. When I do it, I look like a lizard, But a tongue flick comes straight out, and it can come out varying lengths depending on the dog and depending on the internal motivation of the dog and the length of the dog's tongue. Dogs actually have tongues that vary tremendously in length and size. But it correlates with anxiety, with low-level anxiety, that's how I correlate it, some kind of nervousness. I would love to see some hormonal assay work done on this about cortisol, and I don't think it's ever been done. But it's a great sign to me that a dog is anxious. Usually, and this is really important, you can just about count on the fact if a dog is doing it, the dog is anxious. It is rare for me, in my experience, to see a dog who goes on offense after they've done tongue flicks. When I see a dog tongue flicking, what I know is this dog is really uncomfortable. And it's very possible if you keep pushing the envelope, and I'll give you an example in a second, then that dog will become aggressive. I just was working a dog aggression case, and the owner really wanted their dog to sniff one of my dogs. And I argued to them, your dog's not ready for that. This is one of these explodo dogs. And I got one of my dogs who were very comfortable, one of the dogs sort of turn their heads away, basically say, I'm not even here, don't start anything. Really good at defusing tension. They're worth their weight in gold for that. So it was Lassie, as a matter of fact. Lassie is like, da 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 da, I don't see a dog, I'm over here, I'm just no tension whatsoever. And the owner was getting the dog closer and closer to Lassie, and the dog started tongue flicking. And I said, see that? He's really getting anxious. We don't want to push him too far. And he left on his own when we got the leash completely loose. He wouldn't go anywhere near her. He was basically saying to me, I cannot handle this interaction. As a matter of fact, later, the dog did blow. It was safe. Obviously, everything was kept safe. Everybody was managed. But the dog blew and actually hit the end of the leash and ended up right here. Not going after my face, but going after my dog, and just sort of the momentum just took him up. But he had told us, he had said, I'm really getting anxious. This is too much for me. So if you see a dog tongue flicking, you know this dog is uncomfortable. It's really important. The only other time usually I see it related to submission and anxiety, but I can tell you there's one tape, you might have seen it. There's a tape that I don't have. I'd give anything to have it. Maybe Dr. Lockwood has it. It was a local newscast interviewing a police officer who had brought in a new protection dog. Perhaps it was a drug-sniffing dog. The dog was going to work with law enforcement. It was a shepherd. And the officer, they'd been doing bake sales for 2 years, and they'd raised the $10,000, and they brought the new shepherd in, and the local guy was saying, we're so excited, the dog's finally come, we've all worked as a community to get the dog here. And interviews the police officer a little bit, and the dog is sitting there, sort of on alert, but the dog is tongue flicking. Constantly. And I knew when I saw it, it was being shown as, when animals attack or something. So I knew something was going to happen anyway. But I didn't need to know that. I didn't need to know that because I knew from the tongue flicking, this dog is really uncomfortable. And what happened is the reporter squatted down and squats down right with his face right to the dog. And that was okay. And then now the dog is like, now the dog's like doing a lizard thing. The tongue is coming in and out and in and out. And I'm like, oh, it's going to come any minute now. What happened was that the reporters used the dog as a prop to push himself up when he wanted to rise up. So he puts his hands on either side of he's down here, interviewing, puts his hands on either side of the dog's head and then sort of pushes up this way. And as he went up, tongue flick, leap, bite, bite. And have you guys seen this? And you will confirm that I am not making it up when the next part is, and I couldn't make this up more amazingly. The next scene is the reporter with a bandage here, right? And a bandage here, and I swear to you, he says, and the new dog will be visiting schools soon. Amazing. Do you have that tape? Have you seen it? Oh, I wish I did. Somehow, if anybody ever sees it, tell me, because I'm dying to find it. Okay, we're going to go back to slides here. There's a dog showing you a very nice tongue flick. Look at the ears are back in a tense position, tongue flick. Look at the Newfie cross, mouth open, relaxed, and look at this other little dog who's clearly exhibiting a lot of tension. That dog had a lot of issues with other dogs. As a matter of fact, they were not able to be cured. Here are two Shar-Peis. Look at the bitch in the back. If you can look really carefully, do you see she doesn't have a pink nose? That little pink dot is her tongue on her nose. Now both of those dogs, look at them. I mean, they're in typical Shar-Pei postures. A lot of confidence, a lot of offense, a lot of forward, a lot of tail up. But compare his tail posture with her tail posture. It's all relative. Don't just look at sort of, one thing or another. Look at everything as in relation to something else. And she's doing a tongue flick. Okay, ear posture and movement. I think ears are, frankly, really, really complicated in some ways. They're sort of like smiles. Our smiles can mean, and tail wagging is the same. Our smiles can mean a million things, right? I mean, I can do a sincere smile. Hi, I'm so glad you came. I'm really glad to see you. I can do a sincere smile, and I can do a fearful smile. Well, I'm okay. I can do a fearful smile, and I can do one of those sort of, I don't know. I think it's ethologically appropriate to call it a bitchy smile, don't you? Oh, what a nice dress. Right? I mean, you can mean a lot of things when you smile, right? And ears have general principles. Ears and tails, I think, can be highly variable and can mean a lot of things. But look at this. Go back to the slide. This lovely slide that shows sort of the nice continuum. And what I like about it is that it not only shows a continuum of ear posture, but it fits with everything else we've talked about. Look at the commissures of those two dogs. Whose ears are up and whose commissure is forward? White dog. Who has a fear grimace and the ears back? Who's going forward? Who's going backwards? It's all, everything's consistent now, and everything's not always consistent, by the way. And one of the things that will happen to you, and probably already has, is you're watching a dog. Professional trainers will come up to me and say, I cannot read this dog. I can't figure out what's going on. First, 1 minute I think he's on offense, and then I think he's scared and submissive, and then I think he's going to attack me, and then I can't figure this dog out. And then I'll watch the dog, and I'll go, that's because the dog can't figure the dog out. The dog is just as confused as you are. The dog is internally in conflict and ambivalent. So sometimes you'll see all the signals are consistent and harmonious. And in some ways, that makes an animal more predictable. And other times, you'll see an animal who's giving you, ears like that shepherd. That shepherd was ambivalent. And in some ways, that makes an animal a little bit more unpredictable. Okay, so next slide I'm going to go to. Here's back to poor tortured Luke with his puppies. There's that jaw shut again. Notice the ears back. The general basics. I'm not going to go over sort of the generals of ear posture too much. Ears forward, confidence, alert, ears back, submission, fear, confusion. There's a particular ear posture that I just see anecdotally, which is, and I've seen it on Luke. He's not really quite doing it now, and he's black, so it's a little harder to tell exactly where his ears are. But the only time I've seen Luke do this is when he was trying to breed a bitch who wasn't quite ready. And so she would present and flirt, and he'd try to mount her, and she'd run away. And then she'd come over and throw her butt in his face, and he'd get like, yes, I'm ready. And he'd start to mount her, and she'd run away. That's just a female dog testing a male. Very excellent, good, normal. Every guy here knows normal female behavior, right? Just testing the stamina of the male, very important. And what Luke's ears would do is the base would go up, but the tips would go back laterally. So the base is up, but the tips are back laterally. And I see that in dogs who seem to be confused or in conflict. So again, the ears are part of the gestalt, but obvious sort of generals: forward, confidence, offense, back, submissive, possibly fearful. One exception that I never would have seen if I hadn't taped it is a friend of mine and I Beth Miller, who does herding dogs. She's my herding dog mentor. She and I taped border collies who were forced to nip at the livestock because we gave them no choice. The only way you can move this animal is to nip at them. If you ever want to understand aggression, by the way, go watch animals who have been taught to use it appropriately. You want an animal to use it the lowest possible force necessary with very little emotion. Animals who are working, they're doing a job. And the border collies that we saw who did it appropriately, excuse me, move. And if we have time, I'll show you a video. Excuse me, I said move. And then it's just a little nip to the nose. There should never be any injury, but they should be able to just feel the teeth. It's a nip. It's not a bite. It's a nip. Excuse me. And then the animal learns to respect that and move away from it. But right before they do that, they flatten their ears. Getting your ears out of the way when you're about to start a conflict is a very smart strategic move. So usually that happens really fast, though. Okay, let's go on to some more slides. We're going to do a little bit more slides, and we're going to take a break pretty soon. Keep in mind that animals, as we all know, use their ears to listen to things. So don't make too much of ears that all of a sudden swivel backwards. He's just listening to the ice cream truck down the street. Tail position, I'm just going to go through really quickly. Tail position is like ears in that tail movements, again, are highly variable, but there are a couple of things that are really important and that are absolutely consistent. One, is the tail up, stiff, and not moving? It's back to being stiff again. That's potential trouble. That's a dog who's on offense and is potentially trouble for you. You all know, I think, that a wagging tail, well, here's the opposite. Let's just talk about the opposite. This is the opposite of stiff up and not moving. I basically have never seen a dog do a better example of the Darwinian concept of opposites, of a dog who is submissing and basically, as best I can tell, trying to disappear into the grass. I do not exist. I am not here. My tail is flat and tucked. But the continuum in between is what most of us see. And what's most important is to see if the tail is stiff and not moving, or if the tail is moving not from the base but stiffly. How often have people said to you, oh, he's wagging his tail, he'll be fine, right? I think everybody here knows a dog who's wagging his tail is just as likely to bite you as a dog who is not. But the difference is how much fluidity. It's back to stiff and fluid. If the dog is wagging from the shoulders back, you know, sort of the Labrador, hi, I'm a Golden Retriever Labrador cross, and they're literally wagging from the shoulders back, that's a wag that means that's a friendly wag. But the dog who's standing stiffly and the tail is going like this, I associate that with cats. You know, when cats' tails are going back and forth. Look to see where it's moving. Let's go back to the slides. Again, watch to see where the wag starts. The more the body engaged, the better off you are. And I just wanted to mention piloerection. You can see these two playing dogs. The dog on the top, can you see the hairs over the dorsal shoulder area are up. Hair raised, piloerection is what it's called. And what you need to know about that is that that is associated with arousal, period. And you don't know what type of arousal. So if a dog puts, quote, his hackles up, it means a dog is in a state of arousal. It's a physiological switch. Their sympathetic system is engaged, and they're on sort of high arousal, high alert, you know. So if I see two dogs playing, and one of them has his fur up, that doesn't mean there's going to be a fight necessarily, but it does mean that that dog is really highly aroused, and if that dog doesn't have a lot of emotional control, I'm going to watch those dogs. So dogs who have their hair up while they're sort of bark charging you in the yard or something, that's a dog, again, who is in a high state of arousal, and that is a dog who you need to defuse the situation and not add to it. Okay. I'm briefly going to go over vocalizations, and then we're going to switch a little bit. You all know that dogs bark. You all know that one bark is not the same as another bark, and I think you all know, or you may or may not know, that barking is not just a warning to an intruder. Barking is also a call for help. The work that's been done on wolves, Dr. Lockwood's PhD was on wolves, and one of the things that we've learned from wolf behavior is that adult wolves very rarely bark. It's the adolescents who show the highest rate of barking vocalizations, tend to do it at territorial boundary, and it, just as much as it means I see you, intruder, it also means help, I'm at the west gate, 911, I need help. So dogs who are barking are usually dogs who they're communicating. And they're often, they might be warning you, they're often a high arousal, they're very often eliciting support, you know. And I think our domestic dogs, one of the values that a lot of us value in dogs is that they're a great warning system. It's because they let us know. My dogs bark, I live in the country, I live alone. Nobody's going to sneak up at my house. I have 4 dogs. You know, and 3 of them are big alarm barkers, or alert barkers, not alarm barkers, alert barkers. Barks vary, as you know, high-pitched. The higher the pitch the bark, the more either excitement or fear, possibly frustration. The lower-pitched, growlier is more of a threat and a warning. And one of the biggest, most concerning bark growl threats is when it gets quieter and quieter. And one of the things that we tend to forget, we're very noise sensitive, and we tend to react to barking dogs. Very easy to set us off, sort of our arousal levels. But keep in mind that the most dangerous dogs are the ones you never hear. I mean, I think probably a lot of you have sort of dealt with the silent runners. You know, dogs who are barking at you are dogs who you have a much higher, who don't necessarily really want to bite you. The dogs that scare me are the dogs who either give an almost inaudible low-pitched growl, and the lower pitch, the more concerned I am, and the quieter it is, the more concerned I am. The dogs that are really scary are the dogs who never vocalize because they're not communicating with you. Dogs who are barking are negotiating with you. Dogs who are absolutely stiff and silent, and these actually, I learned, Lockwood and I had breakfast 8 million years ago, and we were talking about dogs who give you no signals, and he said, and I'll never forget the phrase you used because I thought it was so good, he said, Tricia, they're not trying to communicate with you, they're just looking for an opening. And so the less information they give you, the better. So vocalizations are the same way. The dogs who are silent are the ones who are most likely to really want to hurt you. The dogs who are barking are Doesn't mean they don't want to bite. They're not going to bite you, but they're the dogs that are less likely to really be intent on causing you serious harm. Okay, let me go to the next slide. I think there's just, I just illustrating what I was talking about. Silent approaches are by far the most dangerous. By the way, this is a breed of dog. This is not a mix. Does anybody know what it is, just for giggles? It's really a tough one. It's Beauceron. It's a lovely guess. It's quite a good guess. It's totally wrong, but it's a darn good guess. Anybody ever been to New Zealand? Yes? It's a hunt-away. It's a hunt-away. It's a herding dog that was bred from heaven. They don't even know what its derivation is. My guess is lab, rottie, and hound, because they sound like seals. They herd sheep by getting behind them in brushy areas and barking at them. And they sound like seals. When they get quiet is when you get worried. So I thought you guys would appreciate this slide. I just thought this was a good place to end. I personally, I absolutely adore this artist. I took this slide in Texas when I was doing my PhD research. I was actually there to tape record racehorse jockeys. And what I didn't know is that there's no pari-mutuel betting in thoroughbred racing in Texas at the time. So the people who raced thoroughbreds didn't have a lot of money, but had a really good, basically, in general, illicit drug trade going. So I ended up walking around some of the most dangerous parts of Texas, dripping with, expensive tape recorders and cameras and equipment. And every there was one wonderful jockey who was helping me out, and he came up, he said, "Trisha, you should not be here. 2 murders last week. There were 2 murders. Everybody watching you. You should not be here." It's like, so I wanted this dog. But I didn't want this dog. There were signs like this everywhere because I was in all these dangerous areas. But I love this artist, and here are the things I love about this artist. One is this is the last dog I would ever want to meet, and I'll tell you why. There are a couple of reasons. Well, maybe not the last dog, maybe the second to the last dog. The last dog I want to meet is the one who gives you absolutely nothing and just looks for the opening, comes at you, and tries to kill you. That's the last dog. This is the penultimate last dog. One, the dog's terrified. I mean, here the artist is trying to show you a dog who's going to warn you off. The dog's terrified. But everybody in law enforcement knows people who are really terrified are really dangerous. They're very unpredictable. They're hard to handle. But how do we know the dog's terrified? What? Just spit them out for me. Commissure. Absolutely. What a fear grimace. Good heavenly days. Where are the ears? What about those eyes? Absolutely. And I love the blood dripping, by the way. In all my experience, I have yet to have encountered a dog who, after a bite, actually had blood dripping from his mouth like that. I didn't. Yeah, you're right. One of your colleagues said, I did not mention the importance of looking to see if there's blood actually dripping from the dog's mouth, and I'll add that to my next presentation. Okay, we're going to take a break. So here's what we're going to do now. We've looked at these static, immobile slides of little freeze frames of dogs, and now what we're going to do is we're going to watch videotapes, and what I want you to be doing is watching for all of these things that we focused our attention upon in these videotapes. So actually the first one, we're going to go right to the first one. All I'm going to tell you about this is that this is a dog that I bred who came back at 9 years old. My belief is that the definition of a responsible breeder is somebody who maintains responsibility for the dog for the rest of the dog's life, no matter what. So I don't breed anymore. Well, my dogs are too old. But when I sold puppies, I told people that they need to guarantee me that if anything, for some reason they don't want the dog anymore, they have to bring the dog back to me. It's the only alternative they have. They have to bring the dog back to me, and they can have their money back. I offered these people their money back. The dog was 9 years old. They'd had a kid, and she started growling at their little 1-year-old. So I took the dog back. When you're going to see her, after we talked some more, it turned out, well, it wasn't just growling, actually, at the little toddler who was pulling at her. It actually turned out that she wasn't always really great at the door when visitors came. although she never hurt anybody, but she was clearly the kind of dog like you would be at the door and they would be saying, oh, she's fine, she won't hurt you. And you'd be looking at her going like, yeah, right, you know, yeah, sure, I'm going to pet your dog, lady. And she would do the same thing in the car. So what you're going to see a brief little interaction between just sort of greeting behavior between her and Lassie. You're going to see her doing nothing at my front door. I was trying to elicit, and then you're going to see her in the car. And what I want you to watch, go ahead and, so the first is just going to let you know, Mandy is, this is Mandy right here. Interesting. Watch how the tails go up and down, by the way, when you're watching dogs interact. It's very interesting. So this is Mandy in my home, staring at the cat. And I just want you to watch a sort of normal, that was interesting. Did you see the whale eye? Yeah. See it? So we're just going to watch Mandy just sort of hanging out. I actually had people come to the door and she does not react at all. That's very common for dogs to react in one context, one home and not another. Somebody's actually knocking at the door right now. This is when she's supposed to be barking and growling. But you can keep watching because I want you to just watch and just sort of see what you have to see. Where's her jaw? Open, right? Okay, now she's in a truck and someone's approaching her. Watch her face. So where's the commissure? And what else is her face telling you? She's doing a really clear tooth display. Offensive pucker. How high is her general arousal level? It's not. I would say it's actually very, very low. And I partly say that because I know all the things that happen next. So, you know, I have foreknowledge. What happened next is that guy opened the car door. She ran out and is starting to play ball with him now. However, notice, did she go up to say hi to him? No. She's not being aggressive, but neither is she being friendly in that, hi, I love people, I want to have a relationship with you. She's not being affiliative. She says, I really want to play with you. Hi, okay, throw the ball. Very typical serious, you know, it's like, I don't want to schmooze, I just want you to throw the ball. Now, I asked Denise, this is the office manager, Denise, I asked her to really peer at her, and I'll tell you why in a minute. So Denise is going to do what you should never do, right? So she's making direct eye contact. You see the ears go down? You see the base of the ears drop? Where's the commissure now? It was back, and now it's a little forward. Is it as far forward as it was before? No. How many teeth are you seeing compared to the teeth you saw before? Not so many, right? I should have looked for the pause button before. There it is. One of the things I want you to know, you're going to see another sequence with another person. There are 3 sequences. First the guy, the bearded guy, now Denise, and then the third one. In between each of these segments, we've actually done one session of counter-classical conditioning in which somebody approached the truck, stopped far enough away that the dog was not on arousal, sort of on high alert, was not in the wrong emotional state, and actually threw treats into the car. And that's a way of teaching a dog a new association. I feel good when people walk to the car because walking to the car is a predictor of something good happening. And in one session, do you see how her face changed? Do you see the difference between the response from the first time and the second time? This is a dog who had a lot of behavioral problems, and I'm really glad that she came back. I kept her for about 5 months, worked with her, rehomed her with a single woman. The dog's great, absolutely no problem. The dog's wonderful, and anybody can walk into a car now. It's no problem. It's easy to counter condition her because her arousal level was so low. That first sequence, her eyes were not, what was extreme about her eyes? Nothing. Her face basically was a pretty relaxed face except for the commissure forward, offensive threat, and the teeth up. Stay away. But I'm not hysterical. I'm not piloerected. I'm not in a high state of arousal. I'm not sort of emotionally out of control. No pupil dilation, no huge round-eyed threat. So this is as much as Denise could get out of her. And she did the same thing. She opened the door, and Mandy does the same thing. I want to play with you. I really want to play with you. I don't want to say hi to you. I want to play with you. The next sequence you're going to see, it's after we did another counter conditioning session, and so the next person you're going to see is going to like do this. This is the next session you'll see. You'll see the guy for a microsecond looking like a monster approaching the truck because she got to the point where we couldn't get her to react anymore, and I wanted one more videotape. What are you doing there, honey? Oh, that's somebody coming to the door. Open jaw, open jaw. Open jaw. She's just not that aroused. I could not get her to respond in the way that was problematic in the house context, which could be because I had 4 other dogs, and she was now part. There he is. Did you see him? Here, let me show you my friend. There he is. Now watch her face again. She's going to react to this guy who's creeping closer and closer and closer in the worst possible way you could approach a dog in a truck. And if I was smarter, I would have had him in so you could see, but I wanted to keep closer on her so you could see her face better. See her jaw start to close? She's starting to think about it. Did you see the tiny little, just a little tiny, now he's getting really close now, and she's still not, she's watching him, a little bit of whale eye. See how her eyes and her head are not completely congruent? But she hasn't done closed jaw, commissure hasn't gone forward, and there's no tooth display yet. So he's getting, I think at this point he said, do you want me to keep doing it? Am I going to, do I have to get my face in the truck, and get bitten? There. Now, how much emotional arousal do you think is going on here? It's almost, to me, it's almost like she's doing it like, yeah, well, this is what I'm supposed to do. Very little emotional arousal. Now, is this a dog who is, like totally safe? No. No dog who's showing you their teeth are totally safe at all. But this is a dog who so does not want to hurt you and he just walked off. This is a dog who's doing a tooth display. Okay, here's what I want you to know. This is not a case that I actually worked. This is a golden retriever puppy. I was called about the dog after the case had been resolved. I was called by a very responsible veterinary technician who wanted to learn a lot more about behavior. And she told me about the case, and then she said, could I send you a videotape and learn from you? I want you to watch this videotape and evaluate it and tell me what you think. So I never saw this dog. I never saw the owners. Basically what happened is the vet tech at the vet clinic was called by the owner of this golden retriever and told that the dog was being aggressive. The dog was in training classes at the time, somewhere in Wisconsin. And what you're going to see the owner doing is exactly what she was told to do by the trainers. And what I do not want you to do, I want you to watch this tape, and I want you to watch this tape thinking, as you should, this is the best owner in the world. Because this owner does exactly what she's told. She has tremendous stamina and patience. She never loses her temper. And as you'll see, she's brave to a fault. I would give anything to have a client who does what she does. So I don't want anybody to be laughing at her because she's doing exactly what she was told by a professional in the dog training class. What the dog does, we do need audio.
Leave it. Leave it. Billy, leave it. Billy, leave it.
Watch the dog's face.
Billy, leave it.
Oh, Lassie, honey, it's okay. Little girl, it's okay.
Billy, leave it. Leave it. Billy, please, you're okay. Come on, leave it.
So you can see how effective this is as a way of influencing a dog's behavior. Grab them by the scruff, yell at them, Get your face right in their face.
Billy, leave it. Leave it.
So this is working well, right? This is working great.
Leave it.
Oh, get your head right down there.
Billy, leave it.
There's your alpha rollover. We'll talk about it in a minute as being a...
Billy.
Ah! You play this at a dog trainers conference and people start urinating. They're so... So she's told to use force and intimidation. She's told to grab the dog by the scruff, pull, to use a loud, rough voice to get her face right in the dog's face. What do you think that this dog, what do you think the dog is learning leave it means? If you were training a dog, leave it means tug of war. Leave it. If you wanted to train a dog, I think what this dog actually is learning is an emotional state. You say leave it, I get frustrated, aroused, and I clench everything. I clench my jaw, I become protective and defensive. Because to this dog, she's acting, she's on offense. You know, this whole thing about this scruff and this alpha, how many of you have been told that you should do an alpha rollover on your dog? I mean, I've been told that. I've read it a gazillion times. I've been told that. Don't do that. Dogs don't do that. Wolves don't do that. That's just starting a fight. Pardon? It's a really good question. What she said was, what if it works? You know, first of all, I'm really glad you brought that up, because one of the things that's important to know is if you get a big enough sample size, just about everything works on 1 or 2 dogs. And you know what? It does work on some dogs. Dogs who are easily intimidated by physical force, you can have an effect on their behavior by doing that. The problem is, first of all, a lot of dogs are not intimidated and sort of inhibited by physical force. They're so appalled by it or so reactive to it that they react defensively, and you can create defensive aggression in lots and lots of dogs, which is exactly what you're going to see here. Is you're going to see a dog who's taught to be defensively aggressive. And what I want you to do is compare his visual signals in this segment. You're going to see a second segment that's a month later. And I want you to compare visual signals between the two. The problem is that physical force, alpha rollover being one of them, yes, it works sometimes, but in a lot of dogs it creates the very aggression you're trying to avoid. It also teaches a dog, I would argue, I think it teaches a dog that the way to get what you want is by throwing your weight around. So you're the elder, you know, you're role modeling. You're role modeling. The way you get what you want is by throwing your weight around. So your dog has now learned, anytime I can get away with throwing my weight around with a 5-year-old girl or the new dog you brought in or the sweet submissive boyfriend or something, I'm going to use it. I want all my dogs to learn, you get what you want in my household by being polite and patient. You don't get what you want by throwing your weight around and threatening somebody. Threats work. They're just not the best alternative. And one of the mistaken beliefs about alpha rollovers is that I had a client who said, my dog is really dominant because she's resistant to an alpha rollover. And I said, well, what do you do? And she had this little cattle dog, and she'd been taught by a trainer to grab the dog by the scruff and pick her up and slam her down on the ground. You know, and she picked up this poor little dog, and this woman didn't want to do this. She was not an abusive person by any, she'd just been taught by an expert who she believed she was a good person, you know, I'll do what you say. Some authority told her. So not wanting to, she picks up her dog by the scruff, growls and barks at the dog, and sort of slams it down on the ground. And the dog is like, ah! And she said, see, she's really resistant to that. You know? And one of the things to know is that wolves, there's a lot of mistaken ethology out there. And you know, ethology is the science of the study of animal behavior. So of course ethology is relevant in dogs. but misapplying it is not helpful. And one of the biggest misapplications decades ago was people thinking, well, the way you get dominance over your dog is by doing an alpha rollover. Well, first of all, half the time the issue has nothing to do with what I call status, not dominance. But that's not how dogs correct other dogs. Dogs correct dogs with inhibited muzzle bites. They bite them right here. That's what an elder does to a puppy. You're out of line, son. Inhibited muzzle bite. They don't pick puppies up and grab them by the scruff and throw them over. That doesn't happen. So basically to your dog, you're being like, wow, she's like lost it. We're in a fight. There's a difference between discipline and a fight. Dogs fight just like people do. You want to discipline a dog or do you want to fight with a dog? Always be asking yourself that question. This woman, I would argue, unbeknownst to her and inadvertently, is fighting with this dog. And so the dog's now on defense. She's incredibly brave, isn't she? I mean, I think she's wonderful. I'd give anything for her to be my client. She hasn't lost her temper by now. How many of you would have not raised your voice at this point? You know? There's that scruff. Boy, that's working. I would argue that this dog has virtually no idea what she wants. Absolutely not a clue. And now the dog has left it. She says it again.
Hey,
Right.
you gotta leave it. It's a good boy.
So she really wants to be nice. I love you. You're my little puppy. You're my sweet little cute puppy.
You're okay. You're okay.
Good boy.
I'm not gonna hurt you.
Now there are two little boys in this family. This becomes important.
Oh, you're it. Good boy, you leave it. That's a good boy.
Lest you think this dog is a perfect angel, I want you to watch this next segment. Watch the visual signals on the dog. First of all, you can't look at my mouth. You can't look at my mouth. I don't want you to look at my mouth.
Hey, let me see. Chill. Chill out.
Little tooth display.
Really? Easy. Okay.
Where was the commissure? I'm on defense, but I'm ambivalent. I'm going to be on defense and offense at the same time. Don't do this to me. I don't want you to do this to me, but I'm also scared. This dog was my client. I would have said this dog should not be in a home with two young boys. Period. End of sentence. So the next segment, you're going to see a little bit more here, and the next segment you're going to see is a month later, and I want you to watch his face now. Stiff. See it? Stiff. Stiff.
Hey, leave it. Leave it.
Stiff. Round eyes. Where's the jaw?
Bill, leave it.
Offensive pucker. Oh, Lassie, honey. Sweetie.
Billy, leave it.
Sweetie. Thanks. Lassie's freaking out.
Get me a treat, please. You want a treat? Leave it. Leave it. Billy, leave it.
Keep watching.
Leave it.
It's okay, sweetie. Here. It's okay, sweetie.
Want a treat? Billy, treat? There's a treat. You want a treat? That's a good boy.
Now, what happened here is that in between these two segments, she called the vet clinic and said, I'm doing what my trainer in my dog training classes told me to do, and I don't think it's working. And the vet clinic very wisely said, oh man, that's a problem. What you need to do is you need to just temporarily, till you can get a permanent fix on this, you need to trade the dog for the object that he's being object possessive about for a treat. What I want you to keep in mind is that this is what the general public thinks you mean when you say trade for a treat. She took a little dry piece of dog kibble that the dog eats every day, all day long, the equivalent of a Triscuit, you know, or a little bit of, oh, I don't know, you know, wheat germ, you know, a soy product of some kind, tofu, a little chunk of tofu, and said, you know, I want you to trade that for the Lady Godiva chocolate that you have. You know, this a little dry, you always need to be evaluating the competition here. If she had had a piece of chicken or a piece of turkey or a piece of, you know, combination beef, chicken and lamb lung like I have here, she would have had no problem. Right? Right, Lassie? Is that cheering Lassie up a little bit? Oh, all gone. So I just want you to know this is the public's version of trading for a treat. Okay, we will continue. And again, be watching the dog. What are the signals that make you think this dog is more serious? He's told her over and over and over again, I'm going to bite you, I'm going to bite you, I'm telling you, I'm telling you. How many times do I have to tell you? But I'm not biting you. This dog is warning. This dog does not want this conflict. He does not want to hurt her. He could have ripped her face off by now. But he doesn't want to hurt her. He just doesn't want to lose what he has, and he has no other alternative in his brain. And he's been classically conditioned to respond this way based on the advice. Okay, let's just stop right there. So obviously that's not a method I would suggest. But what I wanted you to see, particularly for this morning, was the difference in visual signals between the dog. And wasn't, at least to me, wasn't the main difference that you saw was that stillness? Wasn't it? Wasn't that the first thing you went? And did you or did you not do what most of us do, which is when he went still, did you or did you not go closed jaw, still and stiff?
Holding my breath.
You were holding your breath. And so when one of the first things you need to be sure if you're on the front lines, you see a dog who does that, you've got to do the opposite. So one of the first things I would have told her is as soon as he steals something, I want you to stop, breathe in and out 3 times, and go all spaghetti. You know? And some people, it helps to actually give them silly words to say, because if you say silly words, it helps sort of cheer you up. That's where I got that. What pretty teeth you have. I love white teeth. When I get really mad at dogs, I say, they eat dogs in Thailand. Did you know that? Just sort of cheers everybody, takes the tension away, you know, makes me feel a little better. Okay, so I should just tell you the very sad ending of this story is that this dog was euthanized. He was euthanized at this age, very, very soon after this tape was made. He bit or bit at, I don't know the details, it wasn't my case, one of their little boys at a high predictability level and was euthanized. And basically, as far as I'm concerned, the dog was killed. I mean, I don't fault the owners at all, not at all. But I fault the trainers and the experts who put them in this position. That dog should have been rehomed without question. That was a dog. It was an advanced model dog, but that was a dog who basically did not want to hurt anybody and told you over and over and over and over and over again. How many chances did that dog have to bite her? A gazillion. That was a completely. That was a dog who could have been rehabbed at a 95% predictive level. I mean, you can never say 100%, but. Okay, so here's what we're going to do next. I'm going to show you another videotape, and you have to go to work now. What I want you to do is you've been focusing your attention, looking at sort of specific visual signals, and then watching them in real time. Here's what I want you to do now. I want you to do something even harder. What I want you to do is I want you to get out a piece of paper, and I'm going to show you a videotape. And I want you to write down what happened. I want you, and we'll